Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Altishan, Director of Client Partnerships here at Pacific Cascade Legal. And today we have private investigator Jennifer Brissenden to talk about when you should consider hiring a private investigator to gather evidence or testify in your family law case. Hey, Jennifer, how are you doing today?
Good morning, Steve. I'm super good. I'm ready to ditch the sweater weather that we've had the last couple days. I'm glad the
Oh,
sun's peeking out. How are you doing?
I am completely ready. Ready to shorts, short sleeve
Yeah.
shirts, everything. Get spring. I'm ready for summer.
Yes.
So, Jennifer, before we start in, I know that you've been on a couple times and a lot of people know you, but for the ones who don't, just could you talk a little bit about, yourself?
I love talking about myself. My name is Jennifer. I own Brissenden Investigations. It's just me out here. My background is in mental health, forensic mental health, and law enforcement. And I opened up my investigation business about a year and a half ago. I'm doing a lot of work on family law cases as well as civil prosecution for DV stuff, sexual abuse, that type of thing.
Well, then this is perfect. This is perfect. So I'm going to start really with the basic of the basic questions because I think there's a little bit of confusion on this particular question, and that is, what is a private investigator?
I don't know, Steve. A private investigator is not trench coats that you see in the movies. We are not, well, we should not be out there doing illegal stuff. I think, in a nutshell, a private investigator is a data collector. We gather information by a variety of sources to try and get the information that is needed to testify in a case or on a client's behalf. That's my
Well,
really simple answer.
yeah. Can anyone just do it, or is it something that you're licensed to do and then have particular rules you need to follow?
Yes, correct. There's so Oregon DPSST, which is the same authority that does like police training and stuff like that. You do have to be licensed and certified. There are education/training hours that are required to do that, and then an exam, and obviously upholding being insured and all those kinds of things. So no, not just anyone can
I like,
legally do that job.
I like it. So you talked a little bit about the kind of cases you are involved in, but let's kind of focus on, what kinds of family law cases, can a private investigator give some help to?
I don't think there's a lot of areas that we can't provide help to. I will work on your basic divorce cases with no children, helping try and identify evidence and information related to cases involving asset division. I do a lot of asset searches for properties, vehicles, watercraft, aircraft, all those sorts of things. I see a lot of domestic violence cases come through, stalking cases come through where there's concerns for the children. That can also encompass, let's say one of the parents has substantial mental health issues or a background of substance abuse that could potentially endanger a child and affect a parenting plan. That's something I can help kind of put together that case as well in regards to unfit parenting. I can also provide, I know sometimes if it's a bad enough case, there are child attorneys appointed. That's information I can also provide to them.
What kind of things do you do? I think people are interested. I mean, you see sort of the private investigator talking with someone and whipping out a note card. I mean, but there's a fair amount of things that you can actually do beyond that, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff. I do spend a lot of time at the computer. A lot of my investigations is gathering data from technology, social media. I do a ton of witness interviews. And I think we can talk later a little bit, like maybe once we get into the expert testimony, It's hard to take witness statements just because of hearsay rules. So that's something I do a lot of, calling neighbors, calling family members, calling employers, saying, hey, talk to me about what you know about this person. I do some surveillance. I had one recently. It was a financial dispute and a divorce with essentially the male spouse saying, I don't have this money. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm strapped. I'm counting my pennies at the end of the month. He was spending thousands a month at strip clubs on, right, alcohol and dancers. So in a situation like that, I would do surveillance maybe at a club or a bar and kind of try and figure out some of that lifestyle stuff. So there's quite a variety. I also
Yeah.
do a lot of data gathering for restraining orders, trying to kind of piece together that history and write a report up of that history that I can testify to.
The all this information, and I know is incredibly valuable, and collecting it and kind of being able to produce it when you need to in a form that actually would help someone make a decision. And
Mhm.
so let's a little bit about a few things specifically that I've always been kind of interested in knowing. I think people are is finding hidden assets. Can you like go find things that most people can't?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked about that. I can do nationwide property searches, aircraft, watercraft. Different states have different DMV rules. So if I have access to all Oregon DMV records, if they're outside of Oregon, it can get a little more complicated. But what I really want to talk about is there's a misconception, I think, about financial records. I get a lot of calls from private clients as well as attorneys saying, hey, we know that this guy moved a bunch of money, or we know he has brokerage accounts with $500,000 and then that he won't disclose. I need you to find those. The caveat is there are some PIs who will get some financial information. However, it's not legal. It is absolutely illegal to obtain financial records without a party's consent. So, for a multitude of reasons, I would not survive in prison. I am a super picky eater for one, and I don't want to eat jail food. Um, but I think one of the key pieces of being a PI, gathering the evidence and then figuring out how to present that in a way that's admissible in court. I think the number one rule is don't obtain anything illegally.
Yeah.
Because if I do manage to hack into some bank records and get information, I'm going to look extraordinarily unprofessional and my credibility is going to be challenged on the stand. But B, it's not going to be admissible. It's not going to do any good. So trying to obtain information like that without following rules of evidence and without following the law is a complete disservice to my clients.
If I asked you, I don't want you to go in and get the information, but I just, can you even locate, let's say, where a bank account is, what bank they might have an account in, or a retirement account or something like that?
Sometimes, which I know is not a very helpful answer. Sometimes
No,
it
it's
really
a
depends
correct
on,
answer.
a lot. If somebody's really clever, they've moved that money offshore. And I'm never going to be able to identify that. But like there are so many people, right? There's so many blogs and group things, stock twits these days where people have accounts and they're out there talking about what they have. So it takes some creativity, but sometimes that stuff can be located. If it's a collection, I know oftentimes, right, there's a judgment award and the other party just doesn't pay. One of the things that I can do is work with people on getting writs of garnishment or writs of execution if we can identify real property.
Right.
But I, under no circumstances, am willing to put my professionality on the line and say,
Right.
yeah, he's got $300,000 at,
Right.
Chase in this account.
If we're going to get to you as an expert witness here pretty soon, but you also can help other expert witnesses. A lot of expert witnesses are asked to give opinions and
Mhm.
valuations and things like that, but they need some of the stuff you give them, it seems like. I mean, it's hard for them to give an opinion if they don't know what they have.
Mhm. I agree. And I can tell you that the easiest part of my job is gathering the info, getting the info. The most difficult part of my job is putting that into a way that works for people, that works for a judge or an attorney to understand what I have and to kind of piece out what's the key information here. Because if we're talking about a 20-year marriage, there's so much info and all of it probably feels relevant, but it's probably not at the same time. So yeah, gathering that evidence and, giving the example of if there's a child attorney, being able to put that into a report, handing it over and say, here you go. Here's the info you need to make your expert opinion.
So you mentioned a child attorney, you can help people kind of gather information about whether or not their spouse or their partner is fit to be a custody or have unlimited parenting time or something like that, can't you?
100%. Yeah, if there's a custody evaluator, I certainly can provide that info. I'm not my expertise is not in, child development and that sort of thing. So I'm not going to provide that opinion, but I'm going to gather the information that says, here you go, here it all is. You decide. You decide what this looks like to you.
And I'm assuming, am I wrong, that a lot of the people you interview are potential witnesses. And so it's good to just know what they're going to say. Because the one rule of an attorney is never ask a question you don't know the answer to.
100%. People will surprise you. If you have a brief conversation with them and don't get a detailed, thorough statement, you have absolutely no idea what they're going to say on a stand. You want to have some kind of idea about how they present. Are they articulate? Are they believable? Is their story, or their testimony unchanging? Because the last thing you want is to pull a witness that you think is going to help you and they end up harming your case.
Right.
And it
Right.
happens. It absolutely
Yeah.
happens.
And if you've talked to them and you've written it down, you know, they can come to you and just say, hold it, this person's saying this. And you can say,
Mhm.
well, no, this is what they told me.
Right. Now,
I love that.
I mean, you're familiar, obviously. Hearsay rules are a really difficult hurdle to get past. I am not going to be able to take a stand and say, yeah, Joe Schmo told me XYZ without being sworn in as an expert witness. That's going to be hearsay every day of the week. They're going to say, well, Joe Schmo needs to come tell us himself.
Can you find people?
Yeah. Finding people is my favorite thing to do. Steve, I used to coordinate there's a national family violence warrant sweep, takes place same day for every agency across the country. So I used to coordinate that. That was my favorite day of the year every year to try and find people that didn't want to
Yeah.
be found. And I found them in some very bizarre places. Um, yeah, I have access to a lot of software that's going to pull information from a variety of sources. Can I find everyone? No. If somebody sets up a PO box and never has mail go to their house, sets up utilities in somebody else's name, doesn't have a job, I can't guarantee I can find someone, but I have a pretty decent track record because I'm super stubborn.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the big problems with a lot of divorce cases is that someone just vanishes and they can't be
Mhm.
served. And,
Mhm.
those things you can go through, but finding them is clearly the best, thing you want to do.
Right, right. DMV records are a great resource for that because most people are going to have a vehicle and most people are going to have that appropriately registered. Not all, not all, but most people.
Yep.
There are certain
So
target areas where somebody knows who they are and where they are.
the can you get into criminal records?
Yeah. Yep. I have full
Or,
access, national database. Now, I'm not going to be able to pull, well, that's not true. Arrest history has recently been added to my database, which I love, but I haven't decided just how accurate it is yet.
yeah,
I can pull nationally any convictions criminally that have happened. If we want to know about, has there been 8 police reports on this guy and never adjudicated, never convicted? Then it's a matter of what I'll typically do is narrow down where have they lived? What police jurisdiction is that? And then a quick call over. Hey, do you guys have any police reports on this person? Civil, same thing. Like if there's restraining orders, you kind of have to go that long loop around route.
well, and again, that leads back to where you use your expertise to know what's valuable and what's not. I mean, we hear from a client, well, this person got a DUI. I don't know where, but they got stopped for drinking.
Yep.
And what does that mean? You go find out if that really means anything.
Right. I have one actually recently. She's with your guys' firm who is going through a third round of court with her ex-husband. And we were chatting and I casually said, oh, in this DUI he got 2 years ago. And she's like, what? I didn't know about this. And he has a long history of alcoholism that couldn't be proved in go round 1 or go round 2. But now we have this to say, look, there's a problem. There's a problem. And he's drinking with the children. So criminal records are great.
Yeah. So let's get into the testify because it's sort of like the flip part of your job. You gather information and you can give it to people and it maybe never goes to court, but helped. But there are times when you really just have to testify, aren't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love it. I love I love getting up there for some reason.
I had to know you have a very, very defined sense of right and wrong. And you can see through all of that other stuff. The you had said that there are some things you need to be careful about. So what do you want to avoid when it comes to testifying? What are the things you need to make sure that you don't do so that your testimony will actually be accepted by the judge?
I mean, first and foremost, yeah, the judge has to allow me in, whether that's as an expert witness in a DV case or an expert witness just as an investigator, being able to talk about evidence discovery and process and procedure and those sorts of things. We already touched on it, but first and foremost, in order for my testimony to go anywhere, it needs to be legally obtained so that I appear professional. And so it's not admissible. And I think really sticking to the facts. I think a lot of mistakes can be made when taking the stands on asserting your own professional opinions. And unless I'm testifying on a particular topic that I have been labeled an expert in, that gets into really dangerous territory.
Can you present the stuff that you've found? And I'm thinking that, you get up and you say, this person owns this 1994 Ford truck. And they say, I don't own it. I don't own a truck like that. I don't know what you're talking about. Is there ways for you to, as a witness, show evidence of that?
Absolutely. I would go, hey, judge, opposing counsel, here's a certified copy of the DMV record on this date that says his vehicle's registered to him or her. And P.S., here's a photograph that I took of them last week driving this exact car here that I'm holding in my hands. That's going to become difficult to dispute.
Yeah. Yeah. So the documentation, just not just seeing and finding, but actually gathering the documentation is important.
Yes, everything is worthless in court, I think, without documentation.
Yeah.
It's going to get thrown out. If I can't prove What I'm testifying to, it's completely worthless and I ought not bother.
Yeah.
So documentation is everything, regardless of what we're talking about, whether that's accurately documenting witness statements or having proof of those assets that I've talked about. We had a guy recently hiding a boat, kind of similar situation. No, I don't have it. Okay, well, let's go to the Marine Board and, get a copy of the certified document. And let's find out where you moor it, because there's also going to be a lease agreement. So that's key. You got to have it documented and
I love it.
documented well.
Yeah. So let's talk about an entirely, not entirely, but a section of testimony that is not very well understood and can be incredibly helpful, and that's expert witness testimony, because it's not necessarily just the facts, man.
Mhm.
You get to actually extrapolate at times on what you have gathered and potentially what that means. So can you kind of go through, as an expert witness, what you need to sort of show first to be to the judge to say, oh, you are an expert witness. So I'm going to let you say these things.
First, opposing counsel is always going to challenge whether or not I'm an expert witness. That's just going to happen. It's up to the discretion of the judge to have that conversation. It's explaining, here's my training, here's my experience, here's my coursework. And then it's up to a judge whether or not to go ahead and say, yeah, I believe you're an expert witness. With that status, like you said, you get to extrapolate, particularly, and I know I talk so much about DV just because it's what I've done for so long. It applies in all cases.
Yeah.
But being able to take old threatening text messages or substance abuse issues, mental health history, we have the evidence that those things exist. But now I don't just get to say, hey, these things exist. I get to talk about, here's what I know about intimate partner violence. Here's what I know about the risk factors. Here's a threat assessment that I've done that says that all this information that I'm giving you puts this person in an extremely high risk category for harm, death. So you get to draw out kind of the conclusion of what you find, which can be really helpful if it's allowed.
Yeah. Do you get into sort of the methodologies you use? I mean, if a judge says, well, how did you find this? And what makes you say this? Are you able to tell them, okay, this is exactly why, how I found it, and this is why I'm able to say this?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think digital technology makes it really, really difficult. And if you're going up against, I hate to call it unreasonable opposing counsel, but it exists. Let's be real. Digital forensics is really easy to challenge because a lot of times opposing counsel can push so hard as to say, okay, you're telling me what investigative method you used, what software program you used, but I need the person who created that software to come and actually verify the authenticity of this information. So, which sounds really complicated, and it is. And I used to see that in criminal law, even, jail phone calls are recorded. We would use their own voice, their own words, their own testimony against them. And opposing counsel might say, no, I want whoever owns this phone software over on the East Coast to come testify that this is real. So some things are easier to push by and testify to than others.
Yeah. In your opinions that you give, let's say, is this person a threat? Have to be based on sort of the what you saw, what you found. A lot of times people will give an opinion, just fine, they give an opinion, even if they're an expert, but it's not necessarily on what they're an expert at. And so it sounds like one of your big expertise is not just finding things, but it's understanding kind of people.
What do those things mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, so if I just were to walk into your office and say, you know, I don't know, should I hire you? I mean, when should I finally kind of go, oh, maybe this person can help me?
Hmm. I think it never hurts to call. If you have a complicated case, you think there's info, but you're not sure how to obtain it, call me. I know I say every time my consultations are free. I just say, call me and I'm happy to give up 30 minutes of my time, sometimes 45 if it's complicated, to say, tell me about your case. Tell me what you're struggling with.
Yeah.
And then we'll kind of talk through, here's what I think I could do. Here's what I think I couldn't.
One of the things that first thing in divorces that happens is discovery, where both parties are required to reveal all the assets they have
Mhm.
and what they own and where it is and how much it's worth and all of these things. And a lot of people just don't know that. I mean, they weren't the keeper of the books, or they just I've had that for I don't know 30 years.
Mhm.
Can you help those people? Like they came to you and said, "Here's a list what my attorney said I need to find." Um, and I don't even know where to start looking. I mean, can you help someone who walks in and says, "How do I do this?" Or can you do this?
I'm going to be able to help them with some of it, maybe not all of it, but absolutely. On the finances, I think being a PI really, it kind of forces you to think outside the box on things and figure out, okay, if those finances have not been in your control for the last 20 years and you have no idea, let's figure out how we can work backwards to get information. For instance, last week I was like, wait, who's paying property taxes? Oh, he was paying property taxes. Great. Let's get those property tax records because that's going to show some payment information. That's going to give us the name of a bank. So there's a lot of ways that just require me to sit down with a client and find out, well, what do you know? Right? Where's kind of that initial starting place? Who's your
Yeah,
utility provider? Let's call them. You're on the house. You can get
yeah.
that info.
Well, that just made me think. It is kind of a dumb question, but I'm good at dumb questions. Um, you said that you can't just go in and get bank records and records of their accounts or financial accounts. What if they're both on the account? What if the person who is hiring you gives you consent? Can they do that?
Oh, yeah. If they're on the account 100%, they may be locked out electronically, which means they physically have to walk into the bank, show identification, right, and go through that process. But if someone's
Right.
on a joint account, they absolutely have right to access that.
And you can help them with that. Then you're not violating the other person's right because
No,
of privacy.
no, not at all. No, if you're listed on an account, it's fair game for us. It's 100% fair game.
I love it. I love
Mhm.
it. Okay, we're almost done. It's God, we blew through this, but the people what about things you said you don't do illegal activities, and a couple that just sort of came to mind. I thought about them down and are these illegal or not, or trespassing, wiretapping, or impersonating somebody else.
Impersonating, I can do,
I
which is
like it.
super fun. I cannot impersonate law enforcement. I can't
No.
say, hey, I work for the sheriff's department and you need to give me this or tell me this. Um, Trespassing is a huge one. I oftentimes people want surveillance, right? I want you to go up, get in the window, get a picture of him inside with his new girlfriend, for instance. I can't do that. I'm not trespassing. I'm not putting a GPS on someone's vehicle that the hiring party has no ownership to. I can take photos of anything that I can see from public. So I
Yeah.
can stand on someone's sidewalk, and if they have their curtains open and are doing something indoors, that's fair game. But yeah, no trespassing, no engaging in illegal activities.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
get special rights as PIs. We have
Yeah.
special access to info, but we don't get to bypass the laws.
I like it. I like it. It's good. That's really good for people to know because they
Mhm.
really shouldn't do it either. And if they're going to go out and try to gather evidence and they're doing it illegally, it's going to end up not being admissible. And, you know,
And it's
half
just
that
gonna
is knowing
backfire.
the law. Yeah.
Mhm.
And getting someone who knows it to do it. I mean,
Right.
so,
Yeah. Yeah. Get it legally so it can get admitted.
yep. I love that. Wow. We ran out of time. 30 minutes just zoomed by. Jennifer, thank you so much for being here today to talk about, this really kind of important but not well understood part what goes into some family law cases. And then, when do you want to hire a private investigator and what the heck can they do? So thank you very much for talking about this today.
Thank you for having me. I always appreciate it.
Oh, I love talking to you. And thank you everyone else for joining us today. If anyone has any further questions on today's topic, you can post it here and we can get you connected with Jennifer, or you can connect with Jennifer. And so, Jennifer, could you give people an idea of how they could connect with you?
All of my contact info is on my website, Brissenden Investigations, standard spelling. I'm out in Clackamas County. Call me by phone, shoot me an email. I also have a contact option on my website.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, we now have to say until next time, everyone who is watching, stay safe, stay happy, and be well.